This video is brought to you by King Ice. Get up to 30% off your order when you use my affiliate code, Badnik Mechanic, or by clicking on the link in the video description. The discount code could be used on anything in their store, including their Sonic, Naruto, Pokemon, and even their upcoming Assassin's Creed range. I highly recommend the Supersonic pendant, as well as the Dark and Neutral Chows. And yes, they do ship worldwide. On February 1st, 2013, F1 Race Stars was added to that month's PlayStation Plus lineup. A somewhat simple looking kart racing game, I decided to try it out. Not expecting a masterpiece, but just a fun little game that would give me some entertainment for the best part of a week. I didn't think it would leave that much of an impact. It would just become one of those games that you play and sometime later it just fades into nothing. Years down the line you'll be reminded of it and say to yourself, oh yeah, I've played that one. Instead, what I got was an experience that was so incredibly frustrating that 12 years on, each time a new kart racer is announced, I'm haunted by the memories of that game and think to myself, well, no matter what happens, it won't turn out as bad as F1 Race Stars did. Highlights of this game include overpowered and uninspired weaponry, a vehicle damaging system that could see you forced to retire a mere seconds after leaving the starting grid, where victory was often the result of being lucky over your skill and mastery of the track and gameplay. But this isn't a video about F1 Race Stars. This is a video about Sonic Racing CrossWorlds Network Stress Test. Before we get into the gameplay, I want to talk a little bit about the vehicle customization, because this was a surprise highlight for the whole experience. The demo has 3 vehicle classes available, and you can customize them, which not only changes the look, but also very slightly adjusts their stats, but not in any meaningful way. So if you like the look of something, you can use it, and it's probably not going to drastically impact how the vehicle performs. You can just design something that you think looks really cool, or if you don't care about the cosmetics, just design it for how you want it to perform, and neither side of this debate is that hindered. You can even change the colouring and add decorations to make your vehicle appear more unique, and in the pre-race lobby, you can inspect other racers and even like their cars. Well, this is fantastic, and since I picked Shadow to start with, I decided that he needed a vehicle that truly captured his essence, so I built him the Amy Road Warrior. The Amy Road Warrior would evolve over my time playing, but I think this image truly captures how Shadow feels about his new ride. And other players enjoyed the Amy Road Warrior too. Look, I got 4 likes. This helped me heal part of the void that is my lonely heart. So, with my new vehicle of mass destruction, I went online, the lights turned green, and that's when it started. The first time you start playing this game, it genuinely feels quite fun, but how much fun you're going to have is utterly dependent on whether you love or detest racing games where there's a huge focus on drifting, and you really can't get away from it. Until you master how to drift, you really won't do well on any course, and you're just not going to have a good time. For me, however, I really enjoyed the driving aspect of this game. Taking corners felt so good, especially when I was overtaking multiple players in the process, and I could go into mass detail as to why I like the driving, but I don't really want to make this video too long since it is a beta, and I think other modes of transport do really need more focus. Flying and sailing return from All Stars Racing Transformed, and for lack of a more dignified expression, they both suck. For a comparison, in Racing Transformed, anytime I fly a plane, it feels like I'm flying a fighter jet. It's exciting, it's cool, I can perform ridiculous stunts, and the plane behaved exactly as I wanted it to. In Sonic Racing CrossWorlds, it feels more like I'm trying to fly a garden fence panel. So it took me a while to figure out why I found the flying so bad, and the best explanation I can give is that unlike in Racing Transformed, the vehicles in CrossWorlds don't transform into a jet, they adapt to become a literal flying car, like say the DeLorean from Back to the Future. To put it in simple terms, the way the lift is generated that gives the vehicle its flight isn't provided by the wings. Instead, it feels like it's coming from directly under the body of the vehicle itself, and therefore the centre of gravity also feels off since you're expecting to fly a jet, not a hover car. Look, I'm not an aviator, but if you play Grand Theft Auto Online, just compare how the jets handle in that game to the literal flying car that's also in there, and you'll more than understand what I'm trying to get at with this physics madness that I'm only pretending to understand. But none of that matters, because it's nothing compared to the horror show that is the sailing. Look, I'm going to be upfront with you all. I'm not a sailor. I know nothing about sailing, but nothing in the boating segment makes me feel like I'm piloting a powerboat. Drifting around corners is awful, drift boosts don't give you a boost of speed, instead they make you jump, which... No, I don't understand why it does that either. Boating and flying both had its flaws in Transformed, but in CrossWorlds, they're both worse and equally awful, but thankfully, the driving more than makes up for it if you're a fan of constantly drifting. And whilst it would be really tempting to go into more details about the controls and how these vehicles handle, once you start playing, you'll notice the game's main problem, which is the primary reason why I decided to make a video about it. I'm going to tell you a story. It's a story about you. About your first time playing an online game. You start out, and you're not doing too great, but it's fine. You're new to the game, you know there's going to be a learning curve, and as you practice and play more, you'll learn more about the game, you'll improve, you'll become better, and soon you'll be winning more often. But this is Sonic Racing CrossWorlds. Something's different. As time goes on, something strange starts to happen. You can feel yourself improving at the game, but your final placements say otherwise. Getting into the top 3 seems impossible, and even being inside the top 5 is also kinda tricky. But how can this be? Your skill with the game is improving, your knowledge of the course getting better, but your results constantly make you feel like you're not making much progress. You start to ask yourself, why am I not getting better? How come I'm not making any progress? And then the realization as to why that is hits you like the monster trucks everybody else gets but you. The winner of the race isn't usually the one that's the better player, it's typically decided by the one who gets incredibly lucky with what items they pick up versus what everyone else gets. Each race isn't necessarily a battle of skill and player ability, it's a battle between you and a random number generator which decides what overpowered item you'll get based on your current position on the track. And the more you race, the sooner you realize that being in first place is a major disadvantage. No really, this is a racing game where being in first place for laps 1 and 2 will likely mean that you'll lose. The game will provide you with items which are so overpowered, you'll just destroy anyone ahead of you and take the victory. The item balancing in the game is so atrocious that I honestly think this network test has put people off from buying the final game. As it stands right now, I can't recommend this game to you, certainly not for a day 1 release because it's so unbalanced and frustrating to play. Items and weapons are constantly spammed, and the design of some of them is so poorly thought out that before day 1 of the weekend test was finished, players had already begun to develop a really strange meta. They were no longer trying to win a race, they were instead staying just outside of the top 3, hoping that they would be given some kind of game-breaking item, and then the entire pack would just use whatever they had en masse to try and steal victory in the last 10 seconds. To explain how most races played out, let's just highlight the monster truck and the drill as an example. The monster truck item does exactly that, it transforms your vehicle into a giant powerful monster truck. Activating it allows you to crush other racers, and you can also cut corners without losing speed. You're also invincible to other weapons, and outside of the shield power-up, which happens to be a very rare drop, there's not really a viable defense to it. The drill, on the other hand, is even more overpowered. The drill will automatically propel you forward at above boosting speed. It also gives you perfect turning into the corners, lasts for 10 seconds, and anyone who's hit by it is crushed and completely stalled out. And much like the monster truck, there's not really any viable defense for this item, and once a player's activated one of these weapons, they can't be stopped. Do you see the design flaw with this? If the drill is this powerful and can be given to players in 4th place, just remain in 4th position as best you can, collect the drill, and then save it for the final 10 seconds of the race, and there's nothing any of the players ahead of you can do to stop you from overtaking them and winning the race. So if anyone does attempt to race competitively from the very start, they're screwed. So there's very little point in playing competitively for the entire race because you'll put yourself at a massive disadvantage. Even the shield doesn't stop the drill, it just prevents you from stalling when you get hit by it. So what's anyone in the top 3 supposed to do to counter it? For the vast majority of races, winning isn't based on your skill at the game, it's based on how lucky you are with the item pickups. It's so poorly designed and unbalanced that I was even able to do this. As this race is loading, I get distracted by a notification on my phone and I completely zone out and miss the start. When I look up and realize what's happening, I've no idea how far ahead anyone is and just think to myself, well, that's probably last place for me. But I decided to continue just to see how well I could actually do, and I'm in last place for virtually the entirety of the first lap. But because the items I'm getting are so ridiculously overpowered, I'm not only able to catch up to my opponents, I go on to win the race. And if you think that was just a lucky fluke, or good lord, someone out there actually thinks I'm pretty good at this game, I don't think that's it, because Pete Dorr did a similar thing. Look how far behind he is at the start of this clip, but he goes all the way from last position to finish the race in first place. Just look at how long the drill power-up lasts for and how quickly he's able to catch up.
Wow, look at how far that catches you up. No wonder it's busted as fuck. Look at this, look at this. Come on, go. I can't get out of the truck. Go, go, go. Go. Ugh. That was so close. Did I get it? No, I think I got second. Did I got first? Oh my god.
But what's even more incredible about this footage, and something you can do to every piece of gameplay that's been uploaded, if you pay attention to the minimap, the player in 11th place also tries to do this, and they're able to overtake almost every single racer on the track. Here's another example of me doing a similar thing. I'm able to get 2 ridiculously overpowered items, and whilst I don't take the win, does anyone out there seriously think my second place was justified? That I was skillful in being able to overtake that many people with just the use of those items? And even if you do happen to avoid being hit by a drill or run down by a monster truck, you can still have your race ruined by the constant item spam. It's possible to get hit repeatedly by multiple weapons over and over, so if this happens on the final lap, your race is pretty much finished. And I'm not just talking about the rare or overpowered weapons, I'm talking about standard pickups. Virtually every single weapon locks on or has a huge area of effect, making them near impossible to defend against unless you have some very specific items. If you want some idea as to how ridiculous the standard weaponry is, there's these special blue item boxes that you can find which are supposed to give you better weapons, but as players quickly found out, the standard weaponry is actually a lot more powerful, so nobody goes for these anymore. The other questionable decision related to the weaponry is that unlike in the previous games, you can't perform an escape boost. If you didn't know, if you triggered a boost at the last second a weapon was going to hit you, this would break the weapon's target lock and the extra speed would take you to safety, but such a mechanic doesn't exist in this game. So many times I've used a boost item or released a drift boost just before a weapon connected, and the weapon would just hit me as normal, and this means that certain other items in the game also have a reduced functionality. Okay, so just pausing here for a moment. After I wrote this in the script, I kept having a nagging thought of, I'm sure I have used an escape boost in this game, but after looking through most of my footage, I couldn't find a clear example of it in action, and instead just kept finding more and more cases of where it clearly didn't work, so I just put it down to myself getting mixed up with Racing Transformed. So imagine my surprise when I learnt that the escape boost is in the game. In the footage I took when I started the game for the first time, a number of tutorial prompts are displayed, and one of them clearly shows that you can use an escape boost. Which brings us to the question, if this feature is in the game, why does all my footage clearly show it not working? Well, there's a very good reason for that. It only works against 3 different types of weapons in the game: the weights, the slime, and the teleport. The slime is a common drop, so we'll give the game points for that one, but the other 2 weapons are slightly more complicated. The weights are only given to the player in last place, and they'll only target those who are in first and second, so it's very limited as to if you'll even get hit by it, let alone be able to use it. And as for the teleport, oh, it's called a warp ring. Oh well. Is only available if you add this gadget to your license. Now when the game first opened, players were using it en masse, but as time went on and people unlocked more stuff, players stopped using it, because all the other perks were just way more useful, and the teleport itself isn't that good of a weapon. Meaning that, yes, the escape boost is in the game, but it only works against the weapons which teleport directly on top of you, not the weapons which lock on, whereas in Transformed, it worked on any weapon that locked on, so I feel that my point still stands. The escape boost isn't really in the game since it's so rare to ever be in a position where you can use it. And do you want to know the funniest part of me saying all this? When I went back through all my footage to find material to illustrate everything I just said, it turns out I do have footage of being hit by both the weights and even a teleport attack, and in both of those examples, I used a boost before the weapons connected and still took the hit. But no, this isn't a glitch, this is working as intended. The escape boost only triggers if you use a boost wisp. But this means this feature is practically useless. In Transformed, you could use any boost to escape and it would work on any weapon. This was great design because the emphasis to dodge items wasn't just down to your luck with the in-game item casino, but with your skill as a driver. When driver skill has been nerfed to the point that it now directly impacts your means to defend yourself against an attack, is there any wonder why the top tactic for this game is to just remain outside of the top 3 until the last few moments of a race?
No wonder it's busted as fuck.
So according to my script, I'm now supposed to talk about how certain items like like the Boost Wisp have a reduced functionality, since in the previous games they were both used as a means to defend yourself and maintain position. And you know something? I still think that, because why would you want one? Weapons in this game are so overpowered that if you score a hit, it outright stops a racer in their tracks, so why risk an artificial boost to overtake an opponent when you could just stop them completely and potentially cause them to be hit by other players? Another reason why I think boost items are so bad is that, like with the previous games, you can get a triple boost. This lets you use 3 boost wisps in a row, but unlike in the previous games where you could fire off the 3 wisps or triple boxing gloves individually, you could instead fire them all off at once for a more powerful single-use effect. But CrossWorlds has no such feature. There's no alternative fire option for multiple tiered items, which limits your options for using them. But the biggest issue by far regarding weapon use is that if you get hit by a weapon and become stunned, you can't activate any of your own weaponry for a while, including boost wisps, making them even less of a viable pickup. Once you're free from the stun, you can then be hit a second or even third time, making recovery almost impossible. As for how bad this can get, let's take a look. If your first response is to just dismiss this by saying you're cherry picking, there's no way that's a common occurrence, here's the second time it happened to the same player a few moments later. It seems incredible for me to say this, but in a game which falls within the kart or arcade racing genre, the races are not fun. They're a chaotic mess, and part of the reason for this seems to be down to the track design. Most of the courses are quite short in length, and the track width is also quite narrow, so even weapons which don't lock on are almost certain to hit somebody, and the area of effect weapons are so large that they can cover nearly the entire width of the track in some places. You add in the frequency of how often items can be picked up and used, it starts to have a really negative impact on being fully aware of what's going on and takes away from all the effort that went into the courses. As an example, let's take a look at the dinosaur section. This is an amazingly cool piece of track. As you drive through the canyon, the dinosaurs are trying to get you, and you're even able to drive between their legs or under their feet as they lift them. It's a really cool experience. If it doesn't become a visual mess by all the weapons fire, the boosters, and the ring effects which are also all over the place. Quite often when you play this track, it becomes really difficult to fully focus on the road ahead. There's so much stuff going on that you're not really fully aware of what you're doing or what's actually happening at that moment of the race. You just pick a racing line and then pray to Omochow that you make it there this time. And because your senses become bombarded with so much stuff going on, it also impacts the wider theming of the course and whether you take it all in. Be honest with yourself, how many of you that played this game realised that the pirate ship isn't just one ship, it's multiple tied together, or that there were sacks of gold at the end of the final deck? Yeah, now that you're watching a video and I'm pointing it out, it's very easy to notice this stuff, but when you're actually in the game and playing, you don't really figure this stuff out because your eyes are so distracted by either all the weapons fired or focused on these item boxes. Speaking of the track designs, let's talk about them, but mainly the museum track, since I think most of what I'm going to say is going to apply to everything else that this game has to offer. I love the museum course. I think it's a really well laid out track, and I also like the fact it was one of the few that had a somewhat narrative running through it. The start is just a museum. You're driving around, taking time to look at the exhibits, and then all of a sudden, you go back in time and see the real dinosaurs that you just passed a few moments ago. You then return to the future and find that their spirits have taken over the exhibits and they're trying to take their revenge 65 million years later. It gives a really fun night at the museum type vibe. But my criticism of this track, and I know that some of you are going to roll your eyes when you hear this, it's really cool, but what's it doing in a Sonic game? So I'd like to thank those of you who are still subscribed and willing to hear me out on this. Click the bell for more museum hot takes! This course would be fantastic in virtually any new IP racer, but in a Sonic game, and to a wider extent Sega's brand history, what's it got to do with either of those in terms of representation? Yeah, there's an echidna statue in a blink and you'll miss it moment, and these ghosts are from the older Sonic games, and oh look, could that be a reference to the tornado? And on the final lap, it now looks like the one from Sonic Adventure. That's pretty much all there is, and it sort of becomes forgettable when you realise the majority of the course is just a generic history museum. Take this section with the history of cars. These are literally just old real-world vehicles. Even the one that comes to life and drives around the track is just an old real-world car. Why is this whole section of the museum not themed around the vehicles from the previous Sonic Racing games? Wouldn't this stage be a lot more fun and memorable if all the exhibits were themed around Sega's history? And the irony with me saying this is that Sega literally have a game coming out out, which is set in a museum, but I'm not sure any of the theming in this stage references that IP. It's a similar story with the Metal Harbor stage. The theming just blends into nothing. In fact, when this was first revealed, some people said, oh, is this a new Afterburner stage? Honestly, nothing here would really suggest otherwise. Outside of the gun robots walking around, nothing stands out as being set in the Sonic universe, and more crucially, the stage itself has nothing to make itself memorable. Take away the robots, and you could make a case that this course is an adaptation of Ace Combat. It's so lacking in anything unique. At best, it just feels like you're driving around a budget hotel adaptation of Carrier Assault from Transformed, only in Metal Harbor, nothing happens. Oh, what's that? Be in first place for a bit and you might see a rocket take off.
I love it, the rocket go!
Meanwhile, in Transform's Carrier Assault, you're driving around an active aircraft carrier, flying between ships during a naval battle, jets are bombing you, ships are firing their cannons at each other, shells are hitting the ocean. It was exciting just down to its own merits. Thematically, Metal Harbor is dull. Nothing really stands out or makes the stage memorable. The stadium stage is a similar story. Yeah, there's Green Hill imagery around, but once you start racing, you don't really notice it, and nothing about the actual course stands out as being anything from the Sonic or Sega series. It just feels like you're driving around a random futuristic-looking stadium that could be from anything. Even the Kraken segment. Now don't get me wrong, I think this set piece itself is a pretty cool idea, but when you look at the theming of the overall stage, it just boils down to pirates. Very little has been done to make this stand out from the literal hundreds of other pirate adaptations out there, which makes the decision to theme this so generically around pirates all the stranger, because Sega literally have their own pirate-themed video game out this year. Once again, I've got to stress, these tracks aren't bad, but I don't feel like they were made for a Sonic or Sega IP. It feels like they were made for virtually any random kart racing game and just put in here without any attempt to theme them to the franchises that they're supposed to represent, or they just lack anything that makes them memorable for their own merits. Seriously, I can't get over how day and night the difference is between Carrier Assault and Metal Harbor. Anyway, let's wrap up with a talk about the gadget system. When you start the game, you get given a, well, let's call it a license for simplicity's sake. Your license lets you install perks to change the gameplay in order to give you a slightly different experience each time you play. In theory, this is really good, because it means that players could potentially pick the same character or even the same car, yet have very different advantages to the other. And as you rank up, your license improves, allowing you to use more or even upgraded perks. Some of these can fundamentally change your experience. The item switching radically opens up tons of new tactics, since now you can manage which weapon you want to use for your current situation. The perk which gives you a boost for ramming allows you to become way more aggressive in a race. You can use your vehicle as a pseudo weapon. But once you start looking into what each of the perks do and how the game itself is designed, you'll realize that there's a few perks that you absolutely must have which dramatically limits your possible builds and combinations. For example, the game has a trick system which is sort of completely broken at the moment, and one of the perks completely takes advantage of this. So let's just briefly cover the trick system in this game. How tricks work is that once you get some air, you can perform a trick. The more tricks you perform, the greater the boost you'll receive when you land, so it's in your benefit to do more tricks than your opponents do. The previous games also had this system. You'd perform a trick or chain some together and get a bigger boost on landing, mess up the landing and you'd stall a little. It was a clear risk-reward system. CrossWorlds, however, thinks you're an idiot. In CrossWorlds, there's no way to fail a landing, you'll succeed every time. The moment you gain air, just rapidly wiggle the analog stick. It doesn't matter in which direction, just keep doing it and you'll land fine every single time. It doesn't matter what you do, there's absolutely no way to fail it.
Hammer the buttons and wiggle the sticks.
So obviously, you want to perform as many tricks as possible before landing. Here's how quickly you can perform tricks without the perk. And here's how quickly they're performed if you install it. Once again, your boost is determined by how many tricks you do before landing. So you kinda need this perk, otherwise you're gonna be at a major disadvantage compared to anyone else that has it. But even if you are okay without it, just look at how boring this part of the gameplay now becomes. Some perks which sound like they should be good are actually kinda useless when you think about it. For example, have a 4th bar of boost. Well, okay, but it's gonna take longer to fully charge that, and most tracks don't really have spots for you to take full advantage of this, if indeed you can fully charge it before taking weapons fire. Make the green rocket punch larger. That sounds useful, but why? why? You can pick up weapons that lock on anyway, so what's the point? So once you really get down to it, there really is only a few combinations of perks that you'll want to use, otherwise you'll be playing at a major disadvantage. But none of this really matters, because the biggest problem with the game, and the reason why at the moment I can't recommend it to you, is what I just said at the start. The item spam which forces players to avoid trying to win, and in some races, this happens. The footage you're looking at is from a race where I ended up near the front by the second lap. As I raced around, I considered the futility of trying to do well, knowing that any second a player using the drill would dash past me. But the thing is, for some reason, that's never happened. In this race, the game-breaking items just didn't seem to drop, and players just didn't seem to be using items that constantly locked on. As I entered the third lap and became aware of how I'd not been hit yet, something happened. I was starting to have fun. Whilst this was only ocean view and not the most difficult course, the fact I could finally focus on the track, keeping my eyes on the road ahead, calculating in my head if a shortcut was worth the risk, factoring in the positions of the other racers, dodging the few unguided attacks and exploiting the subtleties of the course, using everything I'd learnt so far to maintain the edge. All of this and more added to the thrill and excitement as myself and another racer constantly battled with one another as we traded for first and second place, not with cheap weaponry, but with our skill and knowledge of the track in our cars. Every trick, every adjustment, it felt like a dance as we battled during the final lap, until finally I crossed the finish line in first place. And for the first time during the entire weekend that I played the game, I felt like I'd earned a victory. Whilst I'd won races before, this was the first time I felt like I'd fully earned it, not taking advantage of a broken item, or being lucky as I made it through the end stage chaos, but won based on my own skill and ability. I found what made me fall in love with the original All-Stars Racing, Transformed, and yes, even TSR. So imagine my amazement when it happened again. I was on the stadium course, I was in second place battling against another racer for first. They were far ahead of me and I knew that victory would be difficult, but I didn't care. I was loving every second of this race because it felt like I was actually racing, as well as indulging in all the fun and cartoon shenanigans that the basic weaponry and items had to offer. Even if I were to finish in second, so what? This would have been up there with the best race of the weekend. Maybe if I just focused, if I just got lucky with that one pickup, I'd get the victory. And then, I made a huge mistake. On one of the final straights, there's a series of ramps, and on the final lap, a shortcut opens up here. And I overshot it! No, it couldn't end like this. I didn't want to accept defeat. I couldn't accept it. I'd been enjoying myself too much. Finally, another race where skill and ability was put ahead of the cheap weaponry. I'd come too far and given too much just to let victory escape me this way. Composing myself, I looked down the track, and that's when I saw it. Ahead of me was the exit to the shortcut. And I saw another player come flying out of it, using the drill power-up. And in that moment, I realized it was over. The energy just drained from me. All the effort I'd given to get here, it had just been for nothing. Later, when I reviewed my footage, I saw that this player had managed to go from 10th to 2nd place just using this one item. After this revelation, the fact that I and others used our own monster trucks to crush him at the finish line into last place somehow eased my conscience. See you next time! And that's where I originally planned to end this video. Except in the final race before the servers shut down, it happened again. No, really, this was the final race before the servers closed, and I just have to share with you what happened. For the final race, I put Shadow in the Amy Road Warrior and headed into one of my least favourite stages, Metal Harbour. For the majority of this race, I didn't encounter any cheap overpowered items, and it resulted in a three-way battle between me and two others for first place. It was a true battle of player skill and ability, and I was loving every second of it. I had multiple close calls, like when I almost missed this jump and the camera responded by clipping through the track. Dodging unguided weapons only added to the fun and the thrill, almost falling from the platform trying to cut this corner within an inch of its life. From my perspective, as I crossed the finish line and took first place, it felt I had earned it. It was an incredible experience, exactly what I've been looking for and hoping for the entire weekend. At least, that's how it looked from my perspective. Unbeknownst to me at the time, a friend of mine was also in this race, and he said that he was in third place for nearly the entirety of the final lap, eventually taking second and eyeing up my win. Would you like to see what happened to him in the final 10 seconds of the race? He's doing pretty well until he makes a mistake and overshoots the turn. But I don't think it would have mattered. Nothing's going to matter anymore. Because he's instantly hit by item spam, including multiple monster trucks, finishing 9th. Ladies and gentlemen, I rest my case. Sega, my recommendations for the final release: please ban both the monster truck and drill from the online play. That's one for you to discuss in the comments. See you next time. Duck at YT wants to know, why don't you upload as much anymore? So after the Sonic Adventure 2 analysis video, I really had to sort out my living and workspace since it wasn't doing my health or productivity any favours, and this took a lot longer to complete than I had anticipated. So you combine that with the fact that these analytical videos take a long time to produce anyway, that's the main reason why I've not been able to upload as frequently as I would have wanted to. But I'm hoping that this will improve over time as I learn to become way more efficient at producing long-form content. Crazy Kitty on Your Belly asks, recommend me some good video games that nobody else would think to recommend. So I'll give you 3. The Saboteur, purely for how much analysis I could just do on its final mission, Terminator Resistance, and Aquanaut's Holiday. Surprisingly Sleepy wants to know, what's best for a Sonic story, dark and serious, or lighthearted and comedic? Whichever one has the best implicit narrative. This is something I plan to elaborate more in my upcoming Sonic Frontiers video, but the best Sonic stories aren't usually down to their tone, they're usually down to how good their implicit narrative is. If you look at the early 3D titles, or even the classic games, the implicit narrative is really strong, and this allows you to come up with a much deeper story than what's literally told to you. Whereas in recent years, the literal explicit narrative is the one which usually takes the priority, meaning you can only really take away from it what the game specifically tells you instead of what you're able to put together yourself. But like I said, I'll elaborate more on this in my next video. My conscience keeps asking me, did you steal this idea for questions during the credits from Racevik? Yes, and you should check out his content too, it's really good. Faker69 wants to know, did you make up all these questions? No, not all of them. Some of them are real people. Try to guess which ones, or just leave your own question in the comments and I'll put it in the credits for the next Frontiers video. Definitely not a fake person asks, when is the next video coming out? Next week, but it's available right now for my patrons. And speaking of, if you enjoyed this video and like to support the work I do further, please consider supporting me either by becoming a member of my Patreon or by buying me a coffee using the links in the video description. Patreon supporters enjoy early access to my content, and some of them even get their names read out by my questionable Yorkshire accent, like these amazing people: Ben Malski, Dave Morley, Mayford Stevenson, Rustic Coolpix, Saracor, Stalin Usher 2, That Yaki Guy, and Tyler Credux. As always, a huge thank you goes out to them for their incredible support, and a massive thank you to you for checking out this video, and I'll see you again next time.